Greetings, everyone. In the last video, we did talk about domestic workers before 1994, the conditions in which they were living under. We did talk about them applying for South African IDs for them to survive in South Africa, to be able to be employed. In this video, we briefly want to look into their conditions post 1994 before the granting of the permits in 2010. It is common cause that post 1994, many domestic workers continued with the old trend of applying for South African IDs for them to remain legal in South Africa. As we said in the previous video, that it was easier for them to assimilate into the South African society. They speak the local languages because many of whom are from Matabeleland region, and also those that come from Eswatini speak the local language, and those that come from Lesotho speak the local language. So the issue of people applying for South African documents did not stop with the granting of the amnesty 1995-1996 by the President Nelson Mandela administration, because those that came from 1996 onwards did not have any other document that they could apply for. They could not qualify for other permits. And we did explain in the previous video that the granting of the special permits in 2010 was because one of the reasons is that people could not manage to move to other visas. So before even the people of Zimbabwe were granted Aslam documents in 2002, so people continued to use the South African documents. But there was a new trend that then began to develop during that time, in that people will steal other people's IDs. They will remove the photo. If say I had a South African ID, someone steals my South African ID, remove a photo, my photo, and put their photo, and they will be known as Ngabuto Mapena because the name on the ID photo, the name on that ID will be my name, but the photo will not be mine. So all these things were happening. They call that Kupafaga. And the employers were accepting that because what was key to them was that there was an ID number, even if the worker was not registered with the legally registered as a worker. But that also continued to open abuse of migrant domestic workers by their employers, in that they will be forced to work long hours. They could not negotiate for better working conditions and better wages. The employers will not pay them on time. Some people will be paid on the 5th of the month, and particularly those that stay at work, which is called to stay in. They will be told because they eat at the workplace, they stay there, they will not be, they will have no need for money as other people will want to pay their rental. So they will delay paying them. So the abuse of domestic workers continued. And again, we did not have many domestic migrant workers joining trade unions, which meant that they would not be protected by the trade union because they will be scared to join a trade union because they did not have proper documents, or those that they will be having documents, most of those documents will be fake, and others will be having fraudulently acquired South African documents. So many of them did not join trade unions. So these are what we call vulnerable workers. I know that we have been doing some work previously before COVID with the COSATO to mobilize these vulnerable workers in the domestic industry. It is not an easy task, though, to recruit domestic workers into a trade union movement. So the condition of a domestic worker can be summarized, particularly migrant domestic worker between 1994 to 2002 can be summarized as a worker who was exploited, abused, forced to work long hours, paid very little. We did in the other video indicate that a domestic worker will be expected to wake up at about 5 a.m. to prepare kids to go to school. And then the employer will also go to work. When the employer returns back from work at about 6 or 7 p.m., instead of the domestic worker knocking off, they will be forced to work, prepare supper. Then after that, others they will learn baking, assisting the employer to bake and so forth. People go to bed or knock off at about 9 p.m., 10 p.m. Others work up to 11 p.m. So is this has been the condition of domestic workers before the granting of special payments. But they, of course, as we'll see in the next videos, which we are going to discuss, there are many undocumented domestic workers from Zimbabwe, from Lesotho, from Swatini, and other African countries. And the perception out there, of course, is that every Zimbabwean is on special permit, which is not the case. We have only 178,000, and not all of them are domestic workers. We have said some workers, drivers in other sectors of the economy.